Evening, colleagues. Welcome to this masterclass. It's the first CPD masterclass for the year. We thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come and join us for this masterclass. And we welcome you. We hope that for you to be able to comply with 2022 CPD requirements. Just in terms of the housekeeping rules, please take note of the following. That if you'd like to ask questions during the sessions, please use the Q&A function on Teams or the comment section if you are joining us on YouTube. The session is approximately 2 hours long. Please stay until the end and to get all the information that you need firsthand. Towards the end of the workshop, you'll be requested to complete a survey to confirm attendance and also rate the workshop. Please, if you can complete that survey for us to fill in the attendance register, we would appreciate that. And the presentation will also be made available on our website after this workshop. We hope that you got the workshop and you will learn, and you can actually use what you've learned in this session towards completion of your CPD entry. So we hope that it will be fruitful and that you will learn. So tonight I'm not alone. Let me just start by introducing myself. My name is Mukwadi Mukhanu. I'm the Senior Manager in the CPD and Registration Unit. I do have members of the office joining us on Teams today. We have members from CSR, led by Mr. Madimeta Washishi. We thank you for assisting us to convey the message relating to CPD this session. We also have 2 managers who will be presenting from the CPD and Registration Unit. We have Ms. Tenyiko Mhangwana, who will present the first part of the presentation, and we also have Ms. Tabang Sekolela, who will be the last part of the presentation. So sit back and relax, and you can also have your notebook in hand. If you'd like to take notes, you are welcome to do so. Enjoy the sessions. I'll now hand over to Mhangwana to take us through the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for availing yourselves for this crucial session in your career journey. Thank you, Mr. Mukwadi, our CPD captain, for the warm welcome. We appreciate so much. And I will also want to I will not want to make a mistake of forgetting to thank and acknowledge the media and technical team, which is making this session to be possible, working behind scenes. Thank you, team. And the last person that I would love to thank is my co-presenter, Tabang, for sailing with me this boat. Without further waste of time, I would like to go straight to our program outline for the day. I will be taking you through the first half of this presentation, which covers the legal aspect of CPD. The first item that I will cover is CPD requirements. And lastly, I will take you through the essentials of CPD. My colleague will take you through the process you need to apply in order to successfully submit your CPD, which is the how of it. You can take us to the next slide. What does Council require of you? We are required to comply with regulations, as we all know. And CPD submission is a requirement by legislature, like all the other regulations that we are aware of and we need to follow. Next slide. You can take us to the book. Thank you. What is CPD? So CPD is continuing professional development. As it is in the name, It is about the professionals keeping themselves abreast with the current knowledge, the current technological changes, and what will keep them competent in their career life at all times. So basically, that's what the word CPD means. It encompasses learning activities. It can be in a formal or informal way. You can enroll for an education such as a master's program, master's in public. You can do specialization in any of the fields in pharmacy. You can do even administrative um, education in higher education institutions. You can also do training to supplement your knowledge. Training can come in so many ways, the supplementary trainings. You can attend sessions, you can attend seminars, you can attend conferences. There are so many opportunities that are out there that you can use to enhance your knowledge and to develop yourselves. You can even go as far as reading a journal. We have been hit by a pandemic like COVID not so long. A lot of us had not learned about COVID because clearly it's a new thing that had just hit the country. If we are not keeping ourselves abreast with what is happening, we might not be able to service the patients that we need to serve in the public sector. We might not be able to know which research we need to do in order to deal with the health challenges that we are faced with. So we can use any form that we see necessary to make ourselves develop in our career. Next slide, please. Compliance requirements. There are a few requirements that we need to adhere to. The first one that I'll talk about is the things required from us is to register as from us registered pharmacists is that we need to do what we call annual declaration. This is advice that, or preferably, should be done by the 1st of February each year. But we need to note something in there, that there will be people who might join and start their work in the middle of the year, maybe in April, in July. It doesn't mean if you start a new working or start doing a new job in the middle of year, you are not supposed to do annual declaration because February will have lapsed. What you need to be aware is that at any given point, you can do your annual declaration. Even those who don't change jobs, while you are on your current job, you might want to update your annual declaration. There is an update button that you can go to, click, and change. You can also decide to change your status to non-practicing in the middle of the year because you have changed, you want to take a break. There, you can also go back and change your declaration. Second thing that is required from a pharmacist, a pharmacist from any sector, from all sector, with our different roles. Be it you are a tutor, you are an RP, you are a community service pharmacist, at any level where you are as a pharmacist, you are required to at least annually submit 6 CPD entries. This is done online. We have a CPD platform which we need to use. So people can submit this through. So we cannot submit this through emails. We have received, we usually receive a number of emails, people sending us their CPT certificates to upload for them. It is not a manual submission. Those are not welcomed. You need to go to the CPD platform and upload it yourself. That is, I hope that is coming out clear. So the third thing that a pharmacist is required to do is to keep that evidence of the journal that you have read, of the course that you have attended, of the whatever thing you have done towards achieving this CPD, safe in your electronic devices. This is because at any given point, the council can require you to provide evidence of the CPD submission that have been loaded. And lastly, I would like to advise that in order to ensure that pharmacists don't miss deadline, council advises us that we should submit one entry every 2 months, because it's 6 and we have 12 months in a year. So if you submit one every 2 months, it gives you a chance to submit. This will keep you at least updated on recent information on regular basis. Next slide. How do we do the annual declaration? When doing annual declaration, the first thing when you click on annual declaration in the website, on your logins, the online program will require each pharmacist to fill in the area in which they are employed, meaning the scope of practice that you are going to be involved in. For instance, you can be a public pharmacist working in a pharmacy, therefore you will choose public pharmacy or public hospital. If you are in training, it will give you maybe an institutional, no, it will give you the education sector. You choose the relevant sector in which you are employed. The second thing that you will need to select is the domain competencies which are relevant to you. You will need to make those choices. Then there immediately, the system will open the assessment criteria, straight taking you to CPD cycle. It's a 4-step cycle, which will be dealt with by my colleague later. So you may not have anything to enter immediately, but you'll accept whatever is there, and then you will get a generation of a letter will be auto-generated to declare you practicing or non-practicing. The letter is going to declare the results on the letter will be determined by the choices which each pharmacist will have made. If a pharmacist chooses that they are not involved in any scope whatsoever of pharmacy during this year, the system will automatically declare that person non-practicing. So the designation status will say non-practicing. Those who have chosen any activity, it can be one or many, it will say you are designated practicing. So we need to understand those two distinctions, because there's also confusion as to what does the word designation means. Designation just means you are allocated to do, you chose to do this particular thing. So let us not get confused thinking the word designation means we are not practicing. Look at whether it says practicing or not practicing. Can you move to the next slide? Thank you. We also need to take note of what the word practicing means. When the system designates you practicing, it means you will be doing or practicing or providing any service in pharmaceutical services. You might be teaching or manufacturing any scope whatsoever that is pertaining to pharmaceutical services. It's under practicing. But if you know for that year you will not be involved in any pharmaceutical services, which would have been because of the results that you have chosen when you are declaring yourself, it will be non-practicing, which means you are not providing any pharmaceutical services. No inspector should find you holding medication, issuing to patients, whereas your status is saying non-practicing. Thank you. Next slide. We also need to take note that for practicing and non-practicing status, we are allowed at any given point to change that status. If you designate yourself non-practicing because of choosing nothing, and during the year you decide to change it to practicing, you are allowed to apply to change the designation, but you need to apply through the proper channels so that you can be reinstated, because you will not be able to declare yourself the following year if the current year you were declared non-practicing. For you to go back to the state, you need to apply for that change. And we also need to note that those people who are not declaring themselves by the 1st of February, the system automatically declares you. If you were declared non-practicing in this current year, the following year, it's going to again choose the same status that you were in the previous year, vice versa. Thank you. And then we need to note that we do not designate, if we do not designate ourselves, as I've already highlighted, the system will do that automatically as the years goes by. You can take me to the next one. By now, we should all be familiar with legislation around CPDs. We should be knowing all the competency framework and the CPDs as they are. Thank you. So a competency standard. In a competency standard, a pharmacist needs to identify the competency standard relevant to their scope. And there is a group of behavioral statements which they need to choose from. These behavioral standards depends on the pharmacist experience. If you are a pharmacist and you are an entry pharmacist, you may not necessarily be a new pharmacist. You might have changed your job from another sector to another, or yes, a sector to another, and then you have just joined and started doing new duties. It means you fall under the category with behavioral statement for entry level. That is people with less than 3 years experience in that particular field. If you have more than 3 years to up to 7 years, you will fall on the second category of experience, which is intermediate practice. You will have to choose within that field. And the last category will be the advanced practice. Those are our gurus in the field. Those who have the experience will choose the advanced practice, those with more than 7 years experience. Thank you. Can go to the next one. Domains are basically a cluster or a group of competencies. In our system or CPD platform, the pharmacy profession has developed basically 6 domains under which each and every pharmacist can fall under. We all need to see ourselves somewhere along these domains. We can see that we have public health. You might be working in a public hospitals, and therefore it means you will fall under the public health domain. You will need to choose the first domain. There are people who will be working in manufacturing. You see the fourth domain is organization. No, sorry. It will be the second one. For instance, somebody who's in manufacturing will be falling under supply of medicine and medicine device or distribution company, or even a retail pharmacy will fall. You can also choose this domain. It doesn't necessarily mean when you're in public health, you cannot choose organizational and management skills. So these domains can be chosen from any different sector, depending on what is it that you need to achieve when you are doing the particular CPD. If you are a manager, you might need to do organizational and management skills in the public hospitals. So basically, that is the breakdown of the domain. Next slide. Next. Yes, this is basically an example of, okay, we can go to the one before. Okay, thank you. An example of the first one, which is public health. So under the domain public health, you will have different competencies which will fall under public health. For example, medicine information. If a person is going to a public health facility, they will expect to be told about medicine information, the safety of the medicine, how the medicine should be ingested, and all the relevant things in relation to that medicine. And at the same time, we need to note that there are certain behavioral statements which will be relevant to the different competencies that are listed. For instance, there will be a statement to to advise on disease prevention and control. So this is just an example of how the breakdown of the competencies and the statements and the domains. Thank you. You can go to the next slide. Council receives different frequent questions coming from the pharmacists, those who feel they are only in a sector where they only develop regulations. I will give an example with myself. I am working for the Pharmacy Council. I am not dispensing medication. I am not manufacturing. I'm not distributing. But it is within the scope to regulate the pharmacy profession. Therefore, I still need to do my CPDs. Other questions that people will ask is that I do drug interaction, I do research drug interaction and drug usage. It still falls within the pharmacy scope. So there will be some behavioral statements that you will need to update yourself on and upload CPD in relation to that. So we also receive emails from people who are lecturers stating that I train people, I train pharmacists, I write a lot of documents, I publish a lot of work. Why do I need to still submit CPDs? Yes, you do still need to all submit CPDs from whichever sector you come from, because that's a requirement. And that's the only way it can be known that you are doing such. You can upload the very same things that you are publishing into your CPD. It is allowed. Thank you. Next slide. So, in summary, all the questions that people are asking, we need to understand this fact that being a pharmacist or doing a scope of a pharmacist, it's not only about dispensing medicine. It includes working from all the sectors that we've been talking about, whether it be research, administration, dealing with a client, developing a policy. They are all important, and we need to give that evidence that we are keeping ourselves abreast with what is happening currently in the profession. Next slide. A pharmacist is a 7-star pharmacist. This is a concept which tells us that at all time, pharmacists must be a lifelong learner. We need to keep ourselves abreast with information. Intellectual growth should commence at the beginning and cease only at death. Thank you. I'll give hand over to my colleague, my co-presenter. Thank you.
Good evening, pharmacists, and thank you so much to my colleague Denyuko. That was well presented. And then I will be taking you through the second part of this presentation, which will be focusing more on navigating the CPD page. So we will go straight to the next slide, where we will be looking on the CPD page. Okay, so before we go to, we start with the navigation, we need to look at CPD submission process. And here we're just saying we're having 2 different cycles, which you can choose from when you're submitting your CPDs. And the first one is what we call the 4-step CPD cycle. So with the 4-step CPD cycle, please note that there are no limitations on the number of entries you can submit. And then it also requires prior planning and outline. And lastly, it allows submission once all 4 steps of the cycle are completed. So we will be looking more on this when we start with the CPD on the next slides when we look at each of these step for you to understand what is it that is required of you. And then there is also a second method of submitting CPD, which we call the two-step CPD cycle. And with the two-step CPD cycle, you can only submit a maximum of 3 CPD entries using this two-step CPD cycle. And with the two-step, you don't really have to do prior planning. That's why we're saying it's instant. And when you look at it, you will see that it omits the first 2 steps, that is reflection and planning. So, which explains why we're saying it's instant. And then, so you don't really have to plan for it. Which is like it's a learning that just happened without prior planning. Thank you. Next slide, please. And then these are the steps that you are expected to follow when you're submitting CPD using the 4-step cycle. And with the 4-step cycle, we're having what we call reflection, we're having planning, we're having implementation, and we're also having evaluation. So with the reflection, you are expected to come up with a title which in a way will tell us exactly what you want to learn, what knowledge gap you want to close. And then when we go to planning, you will be sharing your plan. How do you want to close the gap that you have identified? How do you want to accumulate the skills that you are not having? How do you want to gain the knowledge that you are lacking in order for you to be able to perform thoroughly? So that is what you will cover when you do your planning. And then the next step is what we call implementation. So here you putting your plan into practice. You tell us, how did you do it? Did you manage to do it according to the plan, or in the process, did you deviate from the plan? So here is where you're gonna be telling us your story on how did it go. And then once you're done with the implementation, the next step it will be evaluation, wherein you're telling, did you manage to achieve, did you manage to acquire the knowledge or the skills that you were lacking? Are you able to use that in your day-to-day practice? So that information you will provide under the evaluation. And if there are recommendations, you can also cover them under the evaluation phase. What is important for you to note is that here you're just sharing with us what you have learned, how you have learned it, how are you using
Are you there?
Natalie, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Mkori.
Oh, Tabang is back.
Okay.
Tabang, you're muted.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry for that. I was still saying in this 4-step cycle, it's important for pharmacists to know that there is no uploading of evidence. So this is what differentiates pharmacist CPD from that of the interns, because with interns under the implementation step, they are expected to upload evidence, which is not the case with the pharmacist. But like my colleague has already touched on it, you just keep your portfolio of evidence ready in case the council wants to go through it you can be able to submit. Let's go to the next step, please. Yes, and then here is the two-step CPD cycle. Remember, I said with the two-step CPD cycle, you can only submit a maximum of 3 CPDs. And this is an instant one. So you only tell us about the implementation, what happened, and then how did you use the knowledge or the skills acquired in your day-to-day practice. So the first 2 steps of the 4 CPD cycle are omitted. Thank you. And it's important for colleagues to note that when you're submitting CPDs, the system won't refuse you to select 2 CPD cycle, even if you have exceeded the maximum of 3. Therefore, don't be surprised if you have submitted more than 3 and it's still telling you that you are not yet competent with CPD requirements. Make sure that you stick to the maximum number, and then the other, you use the 4-step cycle. Okay, now we're going to look at what constitutes a good CPD activity. So when we're talking of a good CPD activity, the first thing is that it needs to have a learning title. So make sure that you provide a title for your CPD entry, and make sure that the title is relevant to the domain that you're trying to address. So make sure it is relevant and appropriate. And then the second thing that is very much important is to make sure that the learning need is clear. You need to show what knowledge gap is there, and then what is it that you're going to do to fill that knowledge gap, or whether the skills that you're lacking, what are they, and what are you going to do to close those skills. And then the third area there is the learning method or activity. So please make sure that you indicate which method are you going to follow to learn. Is it a measurable method, a non-measurable method, or a structured method? That is important as part of your planning, so that you know exactly what you will be doing. And we will talk about these methods in our next slide. And then the last constituent of a good CPD activity is the learning outcome. So here you're telling what have you learned. So this one will address the evaluation step. What is it that you have learned? How did it improve your skills, or how did it better you from when you're doing your day-to-day activities? So please make sure that when you're making or when you preparing your CPD activity, all these areas are covered. Then let's move to the next slide. Okay, now let's look at the different methods of learning. We're having what we call the non-measurable method. I've mentioned it in the previous slide. So those are methods of learning wherein you can engage in a self-study, a case study, a conference, etc. So you know in this method you can't measure the learning, but you know it's not a formal way of learning, but out of this activity, you would have gained some knowledge that can make you a better person. So here in Council, we accept that as a way of developing yourself, and you can submit your CPD based on what you would have learned. And then this other learning method is the measurable one. Here you enroll for short courses, or you can participate in the review of an article or attend a guest lecture. So with these ones, is like you can measure what you have done. So we usually saying, in case you're enrolling, these are short courses which can be up to 5 months or so. but they don't go beyond 6 months. So those we call them the measurable way of learning. And then we also having the structured method of learning. Here is a formal way of learning wherein you enroll for a degree or for a diploma, and at the end you will be awarded a certificate. And it is also an acceptable way of learning wherein you can share in your CPD what have you learned, how are you going to use that knowledge to better your day-to-day practices. So any of these methods we accept, and from council we encourage you to follow the method that is easy for you. If you can't afford attending a conference which has some financial implications, it's fine by us, as long as you can do some self-study and then you'll be able to submit the entry. So please take note of that, and so that we don't receive the certificates like Deniko is saying, or the points, the other conferences where there are points and people are saying we have attended, we comply. Just take note of that, and remember, we don't need a formal certificate. We just want you to share the knowledge. Next slide, please. Portfolio of evidence. This has already been touched by Deniko. So what I want to stress is that make sure that the portfolio of evidence that you compile for your CPD for each year of compliance, make sure that it's the information that you put in there is current, is valid, is relevant, and it is relevant in terms of your title. And please do not upload. Our system doesn't have that capacity to can accommodate the evidence. That's why we said when we need it, we will let you know, and then we will also inform you on how it should be submitted. Next slide, please. Okay, I think I've already mentioned this one, to say it must be current, which simply means it must relate to the year of learning. If you are submitting CPDs for 2022 in your case, maybe you haven't yet submitted. So everything that you're submitting, it must relate to 2022. We will also accept it if it is also something that you have learned this year, but we can accept evidence that is for 2021 or so. So please take note of that as well. And then evidence can be any document acquired in the learning process. I think Deniko has given examples when she was talking about this topic in her presentation. So if you have learned about the Act, you can always keep that copy of that Act, wherein you will annotate what is it that you have learned and how did you apply it in your day-to-day practices. And then, like I said, you don't upload. If we need it, we will let you know how you can submit it to us. Next slide, please. Okay, now we will be navigating the CPD page from the website. So when you log into the SAPC website, the website for you to access the CPD page, you will have to log to your secured site, meaning you are expected to log with your login details, and it will take you to your page, wherein you will be able to, when you choose CPD, it will take you to this page. And then when you are here, you will see on the left-hand side, there is a menu there. There are a number of things relating to CPD that you will see. And when you click on the annual declaration, this is what you will see. And at the beginning of each year, like Denico has said, you are expected to declare yourself whether you are practicing or not. So if you can look at this page, you will see there are different years there. So it shows that this pharmacist has declared herself ever since from 2020 when we started with this CPD program. And each year the pharmacist has been declaring herself like that. So when you are on your site, you will also be able to see whether you have declared yourself or not. And then when we continue on that page, you can also see the date on which one has declared herself. And if you can look, this pharmacist declared herself as practicing on the 25th of January this year. That's why it is saying self-designated. And if you can look in 2022, the pharmacist declared herself as practicing in May, which is after we have closed, because I think Denyuko indicated that this should be done by the 1st of February. So I will explain why this person was able to self-designate herself even after the 1st of February. And then under complete, it's saying yes, yes, yes. So it means this person has completed the declaration for all these years. And when you look under 2023, under complete, you can see there is a box which says update declaration. So please note that the system will allow you to update the declaration for the current year of compliance, meaning whatever you have submitted in 2022, unfortunately, you can't edit it in 2023. It has been archived, so there are no changes that can be made there. But with the 2023, let's say for argument's sake, you declared yourself in January while you were working in a hospital, and during the course of the year, maybe you moved to another sector of pharmacy, maybe manufacturing. You can, or you are expected to update your declaration since your scope of practice will change based on the sector of pharmacy that you are in. So that explains why this pharmacist, as much as, she was able to update her designation even in November 2021. So the system can only allow you to update your declaration during that current year of compliance. And then when we continue on that table, you can see it is also, I'm sorry, I didn't talk about the status. So the status, you are the one to determine the status, whether you are practicing or non-practicing when you're completing your annual declaration. And the system will also tell whether is it you who designated yourself as such or not. Like in the case of this pharmacist, you can see it's all saying self-designated. It means this person was designated herself. She was not designated by the office, because sometimes, or maybe what happens after the 1st of February, if you haven't designated yourself, the office will auto-designate all those pharmacists who didn't designate, and they will give them the designation status of the previous year. Let's say last year you were non-practicing and you failed to designate yourself for 2021. We will keep the designation status from the previous year. Okay, and then entries, there is just telling us the number of CPDs that you have submitted. For example, this pharmacist has been meeting the requirements ever since 2022 and has already submitted 2 CPDs for 2023. Remember, Tenyeko was saying from the office, we're recommending that you submit 1 CPD at least every 2 months. So we can see this one is on the right track. And then the last column there, where it's saying view entries, with that functionality, when you click on it, you will be able to view the CPD entries that you have submitted. So it will show nicely on the next page. So let's move to the next slide, please. Okay, so when you click that view entries, this is what you will see. Remember, we saw that this pharmacist has submitted 2 CPDs for 2023. So when you click view entries, it gives you more details. You'll be able to see the domain under which the entries were submitted, the competency, the title, and the date on which the submission was made. So that's what you will get when you click on that button. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to look on how do we select the year of compliance. So this is an example of a CPD entry that has been submitted using the 2-step method of submission. So you can see the person has only provided there's no planning, there's no reflection here. So it will only cover the implementation and the evaluation. So once you have provided your story, and then the system will ask you to select the year of compliance before you can submit. So this is a function that was not available previously. It has been added, I think, last year. So please make sure that you select the correct year of submission. For example, if you have not yet submitted the required number of CPDs for 2022, and you want to submit in order to be competent, make sure when you select the year of compliance there, you go for 2022. There is a drop-down arrow which you can use to select the year. So if you can select 2022, it will mean by the time we close the grace period, then it will designate yourself as non-practicing because you would have selected the wrong year of compliance. So please make sure you choose the correct year of compliance. And then from the office, we have also received some queries from pharmacists who, after they have done all the steps, instead of submit for compliance, maybe they click save. So the entries, when they are not submitted for compliance from our side, it will, the system won't count that. Let me put it like that. Won't count that since it hasn't been submitted. So when you click in the save, it's like you're not done. You still gonna come back and continue with that entry. So please make sure that if you are done, you want to submit, you click the submit for compliance button, and in that case, from the office we will be able to designate you appropriately. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to touch on the CPD submission deadlines again. For the year of compliance 2022, remember you are expected to submit 6 CPD activities. So the deadline for submission was the 31st of December 2022. but there has been a grace period that was provided, which will be ending on the 30th of April 2023. So all you are encouraged, if you haven't yet met submitted the required number of CPDs, please do so before the 30th of April. And you must also note that on the 1st of May, pharmacists who fail to comply with the 2022 CPD requirements will be designated non-practicing. And in this case, it means you will have to pay a penalty fee for your designation to be changed to practicing. And in case you are an RP or a tutor, you will be referred for disciplinary actions, because from the office, we take note of the fact that you have in secondary roles. And therefore, if you can be designated non-practicing, there are other responsibilities that will also be affected by that. For example, if you are a tutor and you are non-practicing, it means your learners will be affected. If you are an RP in a pharmacy that is training, it means the training of your learners will also be affected. So the office has taken that into consideration, and that's why the tutors and the RPs are not designated non-practicing, but that doesn't mean they are free. They will follow the disciplinary actions that there will be some fines and other ways of correcting that malpractice. Then when we go to the 2023 CPD compliance year, so we're still recommending that you submit one CPD entry every 2 months to avoid the last minute rush. And again, we say in the submission deadline for 2023 is the 31st December. Please take note of that. And we're not sure whether there will be a grace period or not. A decision hasn't been taken yet. So you better stick to the 31st December 2023 so that in case there's no grace period, you are not affected. Next slide, please. All right, and then here we're looking at the highlights of CPDs. Please note that there are no CPD points. We don't use the point system in Pharmacy Council, and we encourage pharmacists to submit their CPD entries for themselves. We don't encourage third-party entries because it means now you will have to share your login details with the third party, which is not what we want, because that can, it's very risky, and please try to avoid that. If you are struggling on submitting your entries, you better reach out to the office. We are always available to assist. And then we also encouraging you to keep on learning. I think Denyuko stressed on this one. So it's never too late. You can even start tonight. If you haven't submitted your entries, you can start finding something to learn about and be able to submit. And then no non-practicing pharmacists should be in the pharmacy. So if you're designated non-practicing, it simply means, according to Pharmacy Council, you're not offering any of the scope of practice of a pharmacist. So please make sure you don't act outside the regulations of council, because that is a serious offense. And then the last thing is for you to note that for pharmacists, you don't submit CPD for assessment, but you are still submitting for competency. For compliance, not competency. So there will be time wherein you will be submitting for for competency, but for now it's still for compliance. So let's make sure that we meet the requirements, and when it's time to submit for competency, it will be communicated via the proper channels. Next slide, please. Okay, and then please note that there is a registration app, the SAPC app, and the app is there just to make life easy for you to access the office wherever you are, just to make it convenient. So with the app, you can be able to access your digital registration card. You can be able to upload your picture. If you want to put in your current picture, you can do that via the app. And then you can also amend your personal details, like maybe you are no longer working in a particular institution, you have moved to another one, that you can do via the app. And then you can also record your CPD via the app. So feel free to make use of the app. It's also user-friendly. And in case you're encountering some challenges, feel free to inform the office. Next slide, please. Okay, then this takes us to the question and answer session. And thank you so much. This will be facilitated by our colleagues from communications. Over to you, Natalie.
Thanks, Tabang. Our first question is from YouTube. Is the row 2023 capturing training completed in the year 2023?
I'm sorry, Natalie, may you please repeat the question?
Is the row 2023 capturing training completed in year 2023? It's not very clear, Tabang. I'm not sure what the person is asking. If they could please just rephrase their question and put it in the comments on YouTube again, then we'll get back to that.
Okay.
The next question, the update declaration button is missing on my site. Where do I find this?
Okay, thank you, Natalie. If the button is missing, we will request the pharmacist to submit that as a query so that we can look at it and be able to assist. I don't know what might that be. I am just suspecting a system glitch, but we'll appreciate that particular individual to reach out to the office so that we can assist. Thank you.
Okay, so follow up on that first question. The person says, I think it was answered. Thank you.
Okay.
How does one edit this? Thanks. How does one edit the saved submissions if the system has archived them?
Okay, the entries were saved, but I just want to, the way I understand it is that it's like somebody saved the entry, and when she wants to go back, the entry has been archived. Okay, usually the system will archive the entries from the previous years. If it's a current entry, the system will allow you to go back to it. So if also the intern is experiencing some challenges on that one, maybe they need to contact the office. As far as I know, only the entries from the previous years can be archived. Unless, Mr. Morano, if there's something I'm missing, you can come in, please.
Thank you, Tabang. Yes, we only archive entries in December for the entries that were submitted in the current year. So that's the only time we archive entries. So we do not archive entries in the middle of the year. So there shouldn't be a problem with archiving of entries. But if there is, if you can just escalate that to the office and we'll attend to it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tabang. Thanks, Makwadi. There are no further questions at this point. I think we'll just give the attendees another moment to send through their questions. If you're joining us on Microsoft Teams, please type in your questions on the Q&A section. If you're joining us on YouTube, you're welcome to post your questions in the comments and our team will send them through. If you have any queries that have not been answered or are not relevant to CPDs and you need to get hold of the office, please pop an email to customercare@sapc.za.org. You can also give us a call on 0861 727200 or 012 319 8500 between 8:30 and 4 Monday to Thursday and 8:30 and 3 on Friday. We're not open over weekends and public holidays, and there are a bunch of public holidays coming up. So please don't try to phone us on Good Friday and then complain that we're not available. You're also welcome to join us on social media. Please give us a like and a follow on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. Okay, we have a question from YouTube. I'm a pharmacist living and working in the UK and not updated my CPD for 3 years on the system, but I'm trying to fix my issue and become designated as practicing.
Okay, is that a comment or a question, Natalie?
I think it's just a comment, Tabang.
Okay. No, it is we appreciate that when the pharmacists are trying to comply with the South African Pharmacy Council requirements, and the pharmacists, in case they are experiencing some challenges, they must feel free to contact the office. We'll also assist them in making the process an easy one. Thank you.
Just to add to that, if you are in the UK, you can decide to designate yourself as non-practicing and remain non-practicing until you decide to come back to South Africa to practice. But it's your choice. You can also become practicing and submit CPDs. But if you designate yourself as non-practicing, or if we designated you as non-practicing because you didn't comply with CPD requirements, then you do not need to submit CPD entries. But however, if you designate yourself or you apply to have your designation changed back to practicing, you'd be required to submit CPD activities. At the end of the day, it's your choice. Thank you.
Thanks, Makwadi. Then if I can just ask that the attendees have a look in the Q&A section and the comment section on YouTube. We have just posted the link to the attendance register and survey. Please take a moment. It shouldn't take you longer than 2 minutes to complete the survey. And this is used by the office to configure future workshops. Thank you. There's a follow-up to the YouTube question. from the pharmacist living in the UK. I've now entered CPDs for all 3 years. What are my next steps? Do I need to apply to be redesignated as practicing?
Okay, thank you, Natalie. Yes, if the pharmacist was non-practicing, was designated non-practicing, and wants to change the status, she has to apply. There is a form on the website that needs to be completed, and there is also a fee that needs to be paid. But if she wants to remain non-practicing, she can just keep it like that. So the change of designation, maybe let me say it can only be done by the office. She can't, if she's non-practicing, it has to be done via the office. She can't just change herself. Thank you.
Thanks, Tabang. There don't appear to be any further questions. I think we're done for the evening.
Yeah, just final words before we part ways. We wish you well in this year. We hope that you comply with CPD requirements, because it is not in the best interest of the Pharmacy Council to see if a pharmacist being designated as non-practicing or being referred for disciplinary action to be instituted against them. So we wish you well. We hope all things go well with you, and even in terms of the profession. And we thank you for being an extension of goodwill to the profession. I mean, to the public of South Africa at large. We thank you and have a good evening. Until we meet again. Thank you and goodbye.